Jax the Scrambler Ledger pondered the wisdom of his life choices as the starship graveyard loomed around him, a floating testament to human resourcefulness, or stupidity, depending on your perspective. Thousands of mangled hulks orbited the black hole like a cosmic junkyard sale run by a lunatic. "Well, at least here, we're unlikely to run out of spare parts," Jax muttered, kicking a loose panel into the abyss. The ship's AI, lovingly named Grit, chimed in with its usual brand of sarcasm. "Spare parts, sure. Functioning ethics. That's another story, Captain." Jax smirked, knowing Grit's dry humor was likely the last functioning piece of tech in the universe. "Hey, when you've been scrapped together like Frankenstein's monster, you learn to live without certain luxuries, like ethics. Or an easy life." His crew was scattered across the ship, each of them an oddball in their own right. There was Faye, the engineer, who claimed she could fix anything with duct tape and a death wish. And then there was Ty, the ever-pessimistic navigator with an attitude blacker than the space around them. "You ever get the feeling we're just floating in a giant cosmic toilet bowl?" Ty said, leaning back in his chair as if daring the universe to flush them. "Only every damn day," Jax replied, cracking open a stim pack. "But today, we've got a mission." A light blinked on the console as if to remind them of their dire situation. "Incoming message from the Outer Rim," Grit announced, the voice laced with a hint of amusement. Faye, who'd been tinkering with a fried circuit board, looked up. "Another distress signal, or just someone calling to ask for directions to the nearest apocalypse?" "Neither," Jax said, looking at the garbled text on the screen. "It's a beacon." "An old one." "Yeah, well, old things tend to send us into a heap of trouble," Ty grumbled. "Remember the last time we answered one of those? Got us a heap of Cephalor on our doorstep." Jax couldn't argue with that. The Cephalor were the kind of alien menace you teach kids about to scare them into finishing their broccoli. Tentacled nightmares with an attitude problem and a penchant for turning planets into barbecue pits. The galaxy's ultimate party crashers. But curiosity, like stupidity, was a deeply human trait. "Let's check it out," Jax decided, half out of curiosity, half because they were low on anything resembling resources. "You sure about that, Captain?" Faye asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. "I like my limbs exactly where they are." "Oh, come on, Faye," Jax replied, flashing his best reassuring grin. "Think of the adventure, think of the glory, think of the body bags," Ty muttered under his breath. Grit's voice cut through the banter. "Coordinates locked. Ready to engage, assuming you haven't changed your mind about our impending doom." Jax ignored the AI pessimism and plotted a course through the graveyard's cluttered expanse. Each ship they passed was a monument to human perseverance and, let's face it, shitty decision-making. But one ship stood out even among the twisted wreckage, a massive, ancient cruiser with a hull scarred by countless battles. "There it is," Faye said, pointing at the cruiser. "Our beacon." "Looks cozy," Jax noted, the sarcasm dripping from his words like oil from a leaky gasket. "Cozy as a coffin," Ty interjected. "I swear if I see one more tentacle—" "You'll do what exactly?" Jax shot back. "Complain it to death." With a shudder, their ship docked with the cruiser. The airlock hissed open, and the smell of stale desperation, mixed with a hint of burnt circuitry, wafted in. "Someone should really consider opening a window," Faye joked, pulling on her helmet. Inside, the place was as inviting as a morgue. Lights flickered ominously, casting sinister shadows that danced along the walls, like they were celebrating the end of humanity in style. "Welcome to our new vacation home," Jax said, his voice echoing through the empty corridor. "Yeah, it's got that rustic dying in space feel," Ty replied. "So what's the plan, Captain?" Jax took another look at the flickering lights and the eerie silence. "We find that beacon, see what the fuss is about, and get the hell out." "And if we run into anything unfriendly?" Faye asked, her hand resting on her sidearm. "We say hello in the universal language of don't eat us." With Jax leading the way, they navigated the cruiser's maze-like halls. Each step echoed with a mournful resonance that made the hair on the back of their necks stand up, or it would have, if space hadn't already made that redundant. Then they found it, a room lined with pods, each one containing a perfect replica of a human being. "Well, that's not creepy at all," Faye said, peering into one of the pods. "Clones, why'd it have to be clones?" Jax approached the console, wiping a layer of dust away to reveal a sea of indecipherable symbols. "Looks like this was some kind of cloning facility." Ty's eyes narrowed. "You think this has anything to do with them?" Jax shrugged. "Wouldn't surprise me. A forgotten weapon in a forgotten war." The lights above flickered again, this time with a sense of urgency. "We should move," Jax said, the weight of their discovery pressing down like a bad hangover. As they turned to leave, a faint, ghostly voice crackled through the ship's comms. "You are not alone." "Great," Ty groaned. "Now the ship's haunted. Haunted or not, we're getting out," Jax ordered, his pace quickening. "We don't have time for ghost stories." Yet, as they made their way back to the airlock, an unsettling feeling settled over them. The kind you get when you realize the universe's cosmic toilet bowl is about to overflow. The airlock loomed ahead, a gateway back to the relative safety of their own cobbled-together vessel. But as they reached it, the door slammed shut with a finality that made Jax's gut twist. "What now?" Faye exclaimed, her fingers flying over the controls. "The ship's locked us in," Grit reported through their suit's comms with all the cheer of a funeral director. Jax cursed under his breath. "Guess the universe isn't done with us yet." "Yeah, well, I'm done with the universe," Ty shot back, aiming a kick at the door. A low rumble echoed through the ship as lights began to flicker in a rhythmic pattern, like a countdown to something unpleasant. "I don't like the sound of that," Faye said, her voice tight with anxiety. Jax agreed, though he'd never admitted out loud. "All right, team. Let's find a way to get this door open and get the hell out before we become the punchline of some cosmic joke." And as the lights continued their ominous dance, Jax knew that whatever was coming next was bound to be a real doozy. The airlock clanged shut, leaving Jax and his crew stuck on the decrepit cruiser, like fish in a particularly unsavory can. As the rhythmic flickering of lights continued, Jax couldn't help but feel like he was in a terrible nightclub where the main act was an anxiety-induced heart attack. Faye was already elbow-deep in the airlock panel, muttering something that might have been a prayer or a curse. Probably both, considering the circumstances. "Give me a minute," she said, her voice laced with irritation. "And maybe a miracle. Pretty sure we're fresh out of those," Ty chimed in, leaning against the wall with the grace of a man resigned to his fate. "And if this place starts playing elevator music, I'm checking out early." "Focus, people," Jax barked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We're not dying here. Not today, anyway." "Optimism, thy name is Jax," quipped Grit through the comms, the AI voice as dry as ever. "Meanwhile, I'm picking up some unusual energy readings. Might want to check it out before it checks you out." "Unusual energy readings?" Faye asked, cocking an eyebrow. "That's a new one." "What's it look like, Captain?" "Like our luck's taken another nosedive," Jax replied, making a mental note to throttle whoever suggested checking out this beacon. Following Grit's sarcasm-laden directions, they found themselves in what used to be the ship's control room. It had seen better days, or possibly just less terrible ones. The command interface was a jumbled mess of wires, screens, and what looked suspiciously like a coffee stain the size of Mars. "Well, this is interesting," Faye remarked, peering at the console. "Looks like someone tried to hotwire a toaster." Jax rubbed his face, his patience thinning. "Can you make sense of it?" "Sure," Faye shrugged, then added with a grin, "I mean, if you give me a year and a very large bribe." "How about we settle for getting us out of here in one piece?" Jax suggested, trying not to think about how quickly things had spiraled. Suddenly, Faye's eyes lit up. "Hang on. I think I found something." She pointed at a flickering holographic display, its symbols as incomprehensible as the rest of the ship. "Careful," Ty warned, his suspicion honed to a fine point. "Last thing we need is to activate a self-destruct sequence, or worse, an interstellar karaoke machine." Faye ignored him, her fingers flying over the console with a confidence that worried Jax more than reassured him. He briefly considered stopping her, but curiosity was a terrible master. The ship shuddered violently, the lights above them flaring to life. "Oh," Faye muttered, suddenly less sure of herself. "I might have done something." "No kidding," Jax snapped, glaring at the console as if it personally offended him. Before anyone could react, the floor beneath them groaned and shifted, revealing a hidden array of pods. More of those damn cloning devices, their surfaces fogged over with age. "Great. More of these," Ty said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Just what we needed. A series of bad decisions made flesh." As if on cue, the pods hummed ominously. The air crackled with energy and the clones began to stir, their forms coalescing like an unsettling magic trick. One by one, the pods opened with a hiss, releasing their newly formed occupants. "What the hell?" Jax blinked, staring at the duplicates that bore too close a resemblance to his crew for comfort. "This day's officially taken a dive into the weird." "Ah, the gift that keeps on giving," Grit commented dryly, as the clones fully emerged, blinking stupidly at their surroundings like they'd just been rudely awakened from a nap. "Now what?" Faye asked, her voice edged with bewilderment as she stared at her double. It was like looking into a mirror with an unfortunate case of bedhead. Jax took a deep breath, trying to keep his head clear. "All right, let's not panic. Maybe they're friendly." "Yeah, and maybe I'm the Emperor of Mars," Ty retorted. "What's your point?" The clones stood there, silent and inscrutable, their eyes glazed over like they'd been programmed by someone who majored in apathy. Jax approached the nearest one cautiously, half expecting it to spring to life and punch him in the face. "Hey," he called out, his voice strained. "Can you understand us?" To everyone's surprise, the clone spoke, its voice a flat echo of Jax's own. "Understand? Yes." "Great," Jax thought. "Now we're having conversations with ourselves." "Who are you?" he pressed, trying not to sound like he was talking to a particularly dense toaster. The clone tilted its head, mimicking Jax's gestures in a way that was both comical and unnerving. "We are you." "Well, that's helpful," Faye muttered, her eyes darting between the clones and the exit as if weighing her chances of making a run for it. "Let me guess," Ty interjected, eyeing his clone with a mix of disdain and morbid curiosity. "You're here to replace us," the clone Ty shrugged as if the question was beneath its notice. "Replace, improve." "Improve," Jax echoed, his temper flaring. "You think you can do better?" The clone nodded solemnly. "Yes, better." Jax turned to his crew, his expression a mix of exasperation and incredulity. "We can't let these things take over. Who knows what they're capable of?" "So what's the plan?" Faye asked, shifting her gaze from her clone to Jax. "We improvise," Jax decided, feeling the weight of the decision like a lead blanket. "Try not to get killed by our own faces." With their backs metaphorically against the wall, the crew regrouped, drawing their sidearms with the grim determination of people who'd seen the universe's worst and come out the other side. Barely, the clone Jax took a step forward, its expression as blank as a politician's promise. "We do not wish to harm." "Could have fooled me," Jax replied, his voice tinged with sarcasm. "You lock us in here, then try to outdo us at our own game." "Coexist," the clone offered, its attempt at diplomacy as lacking as its charisma. "Coexistence isn't really our strong suit," Ty said, leveling his weapon with a confidence that belied his earlier pessimism. "Especially when it comes to imposters." The clones, however, didn't seem inclined to take the hint. They advanced slowly, their movements eerily synchronized, like the world's creepiest flash mob. "All right, new plan," Jax said, his mind racing. "We need to find a way to shut this whole operation down. Faye, see if you can disable the cloning facility." "On it," Faye replied, already moving back to the console with a determination that was almost inspiring. Almost. As the clones closed in, Jax and Ty provided cover, their weapons barking defiance in the dimly lit chamber. The clones retaliated with a kind of detached efficiency that made Jax's skin crawl. For every clone they downed, Another seemed to take its place, the damn facility churning out replacements like it was trying to win a prize for overpopulation. "This is getting us nowhere," Ty shouted over the din. "We're just delaying the inevitable." "Then let's make the inevitable work for us," Jack shot back, his resolve hardening. "Faye, any luck?" "Almost there," Faye's voice crackled over the comms, her fingers dancing over the controls with a grace she usually reserved for late-night card games. "Just need to bypass this last." Whatever she was about to say was cut off as the console erupted in sparks, sending Faye sprawling. "Damn it," Jax roared, rushing to her side. "Faye, you all right?" she grimaced, shaking off the shock. "Yeah, just a little. Crispy." "Well, at least you're still crispy instead of extra crispy," Ty quipped, even as he fought off another batch of clones. Jax helped Faye to her feet, his mind a whirl of half-formed plans and desperation. "There's gotta be another way to stop them." "Actually, there might be," Faye said, her eyes lighting up with a manic glint. "If I can trigger an overload in the power core, it might fry the whole system. And us along with it," Ty added, ever the ray of sunshine. "Got a better idea?" Jax challenged, already knowing the answer. "Not really," Ty admitted, his tone begrudgingly accepting. "I just like pointing out the pitfalls." "Then it's settled," Jax said, feeling a grim satisfaction at having a plan, however suicidal. "Let's give them something to remember us by." With the decision made, they fought their way to the power core, a tangled mass of wires and machinery that looked about as stable as a politician's promises. Faye set to work, her hands a blur as she manipulated the controls with reckless abandon. "Almost there," she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead as the clones pressed in. Jax and Ty held the line, their weapons blazing as the howl of the ship's systems reached a fever pitch. "Got it!" Faye yelled triumphantly, just as the power core emitted a high-pitched whine that made the fillings in Jax's teeth vibrate. "Time to go," Jax ordered, grabbing Faye and pulling her toward the exit. "Ty, move your ass." As they sprinted down the corridor, the ship shuddered violently, the lights flickering in a frenetic dance that screamed impending doom. They reached the airlock just as the power core detonated, a concussive wave of energy tearing through the ship with a fury that was almost beautiful in its destructiveness. Fortunately, Faye's earlier tinkering had worked some magic, and the airlock released with a hiss, spitting them back into the relative safety of their own ship. "Punch it, Grit," Jax commanded, collapsing into his seat with a weary groan. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling them away from the doomed cruiser as it imploded, a silent firework in the cold expanse of space. As the adrenaline ebbed, Jax slumped back, feeling every bit of the exhaustion that had settled into his bones. "Well, that was fun," Faye said, her voice tinged with a wry humor that didn't quite mask the fatigue. "Next time, let's just play cards," Ty suggested, his sarcasm subdued but still present. "Agreed," Jax replied, managing a weak but genuine smile. "But at least we saved the universe from another potential disaster." "Yeah," Grit interjected, "and yourselves from a truly embarrassing replacement." Jax chuckled, the sound tinged with relief. "That's one way to put it." As the starship graveyard loomed behind them, Jax realized that today they'd lived to fight another day. And maybe, just maybe, they'd earned a little peace. At least until the galaxy threw another curveball their way. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, they were still here, still kicking and still one step ahead of whatever the universe had in store. Jax had always considered himself somewhat flexible, adaptable even. But standing once again in the ship's control room, face to face with his own double, he couldn't help but feel a grim sense of irony. He was pretty sure this was the universe's way of telling him to stop talking to himself. The clones, meanwhile, were busy replicating every quirk, flaw, and questionable fashion choice of the crew, right down to Ty's mismatched socks. Jax supposed it was fitting. In a world full of possibilities, humanity's greatest legacy was apparently redundancy. "Well, this is cozy," Faye drawled, still sporting the singed look from their last escapade. Her clone was making a concerted effort to mirror her posture, albeit with a bit more attention to posture than irony. Ty was engaged in a staring contest with his clone. Should we name them? Maybe something like Disappointment 1, 2, and 3, why bother? Jax replied, rubbing his temples. They're not sticking around long enough to deserve names. The duplicates, flesh and blood copies of the crew, only with slightly less sarcasm, stood in a line looking as unimpressed as the originals. Grit, the ship's AI, offered its usual brand of unhelpful commentary. I must say I'm impressed. The universe found a way to make you all even more insufferable, thanks, Grit, Jax muttered. Always nice to know you have our backs. Technically, I don't have a back, Grit replied, its voice resonating with that smug air only artificial intelligence could pull off. The crew was quickly realizing that their attempts at forming even the most basic of alliances with their clones were in vain. The clones were like living shadows, mimicking actions but lacking any true initiative. Which was probably for the best, given that their combined brain power was about as effective as a paper mache helmet in a meteor shower. All right then, Jax said, trying to rally some sense of leadership. We need to figure out how to deal with our surplus selves and get the hell out of here. Too bad we can't just shove them out an airlock and call it a day, Ty offered, only half joking. Probably. Faye rolled her eyes, her sarcasm meter dialed up to 11, and risked them floating back, claiming squatters' rights. No thanks. The clones continued to stand there, silent and motionless as if waiting for the universe to give them a clue. Jax had to admit, it was unsettling to see his own expression reflected back at him with such uncanny blankness. So what's the plan? Faye asked, glancing at Jax with the weary resignation of someone who signed up for vacation and got a survival horror instead. Jax looked around, his mind a whirl of half-baked ideas and the nagging sense that they'd forgotten to do something crucial. We could try to power down the cloning facility, use its own systems against it. If we can drain its resources, maybe we can stop it from pumping out more of us. Sounds like a plan, Ty agreed, albeit reluctantly. But what about these guys? He gestured toward the clones, who now appeared to be having a very dull staring contest with each other. We can't just leave them here. They'll get bored and start redecorating, and you know how I feel about Feng Shui, Jax quipped, though part of him was serious. Why not bring them with us? Faye suggested, shrugging. If nothing else, they could be a decent distraction if things go south. Faye, things have already gone southeast, and every other direction that screams run for your life, Jax grumbled, but he couldn't deny the logic in her suggestion. As if on cue, Grit's voice cut through the banter, its tone a shade more serious than usual. I hate to interrupt your clone management seminar, but we have a bigger problem. Bigger than this? Jax asked, skepticism dripping from his words like oil from a leaky engine. I'm detecting an old Cephalor war probe reactivating in the vicinity, Grit informed, the AI monotone delivery failing to convey the gravity of the situation. Cephalor, Ty exclaimed, his eyes widening. You mean those tentacled nightmares with a penchant for blowing things up first and asking questions never? The very same, Grit confirmed, with the enthusiasm of a doomsday prophet. It seems the cloning activity attracted its attention. I'd recommend vacating immediately, unless you want to become a footnote in an alien war journal. Jax sighed, a long, drawn-out groan that sounded like a balloon giving its last breath. Of course. Because why not? The Cephalor had been a footnote in humanity's ill-fated attempt to play nice with the galaxy. They'd left behind a lot of nasty surprises, and apparently this ancient probe was one of them. Faye crossed her arms, taking a moment to process. So, let me get this straight. We have clones that think they are us, a derelict ship, and now an alien war probe probably programmed to turn us into space dust. Did I miss anything? Maybe a nice cocktail would round things off. Ty suggested, his sarcasm as dry as the vacuum of space. Jax ignored them, turning to Grit. Can we disable the probe? It's designed to resist tampering, Grit explained. The best option is to shut down all unnecessary systems and play dead. It might ignore us if we're not a threat, like a giant, murderous cat ignoring a mouse, Faye commented. Fantastic, Jax made a decision. Okay, everyone, we're going dark. Tai Faye, get to engineering. Prepare to reroute power to essential systems only. Grit, guide them through it. I'll handle the clones. What are you going to do? Sing them a lullaby? Tai asked as he and Faye headed for the door. Something like that, Jax muttered, waving them off. He turned back to the clones, staring into the eyes of his own carbon copy. All right, you lot, time to listen up. I know you're not exactly the chatty type, but if you're anything like us, you know when to shut up and listen. The clones didn't respond, but they seemed to at least grasp the concept of attention. Jax took that as a win. Here's the deal. There's a big, nasty probe out there that wants to turn us into a fine mist. We're going to play dead, and you're going to help by not doing anything stupid. Got it. The clones gave no indication they understood, but Jax pressed on. Just stay quiet, follow me, and maybe, just maybe, we'll all make it out of this alive. Leaving the clones with a vague sense of purpose, Jax headed for the control room, his mind racing with what-ifs and maybes. The ship was already starting to go dark, systems dimming as Faye and Tai worked to reroute power. Grit, how long do we have before the probe gets too curious? Jax asked, urgency sharpening his voice. Approximately 5 minutes, Grit replied. Give or take a cosmic blink, Jax grimaced. Plenty of time to panic then. Lights flickered, and the ship settled into an eerie silence, the hum of life support systems reduced to a whisper. Jax could feel the tension in the air, a taut string ready to snap. He took a deep breath, focusing on the task ahead. This wasn't the first time they'd faced impossible odds, and it likely wouldn't be the last. Survival wasn't just a skill. It was an art form, one they'd been practicing for far too long. Almost there, Faye's voice came over the comms, laced with determination. Just need to coax a bit more cooperation out of these circuits. You've got this, Jax encouraged, though part of him was wondering how much longer they could keep bluffing their way through the universe's bad poker hand. Grit chimed in, its tone almost encouraging. I must say, there's a certain charm to your persistent survival instinct. Thanks, Grit. It's nice to know you don't completely hate us, Jax replied dryly. Don't mistake amusement for affection, Grit quipped back. I'm just here for the show, Jax chuckled despite himself. And what a show it is. The ship systems continued their descent into silence, and Jax watched as the stars outside seemed to hold their breath, waiting. He could only hope that the Cephalor probe would take the hint and move along. Powers down to essentials. Life support's on minimal, but we should be good, Faye announced, her voice a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. Let's hope the probe buys the act. They waited, tension hanging like an unwanted guest. Jax could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him, every second stretching into eternity. Grit status. Jax prompted, needing to break the oppressive silence. The probe is scanning, Grit replied, holding steady. It may pass us by if we maintain the facade. Let's hope it's as gullible as we need it to be, Tai said, his voice tight with apprehension. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness, each one a small victory in a battle that felt far from over. The clones, remarkably, remained still, a testament to either their understanding or complete ignorance. Jax didn't care which, as long as it worked. Finally, Grit spoke again, its voice carrying a hint of relief. The probe is moving away. It seems the deception worked. A collective sigh of relief swept through the crew, the tension in the air evaporating like mist under a rising sun. Jax slumped back in his seat, the weight of reality settling back into place. Well, that was close, Faye commented, the humor back in her voice. I guess we've still got it. Got what exactly? Tai asked, his tone a blend of sarcasm and genuine curiosity. Survival skills, charm, sheer dumb luck, Jax listed, ticking them off on his fingers. Take your pick. The ship system slowly powered back up, the comforting hum of machinery returning like an old friend. Jax allowed himself a small smile, the kind that came with knowing they'd dodged yet another cosmic bullet. "So, what now?" Faye asked, glancing at Jax with a mix of expectation and trust. "We get the hell out of here," Jax replied, feeling the familiar thrill of having a plan, however temporary. Grit set a course for the nearest safe zone. "Let's put some distance between us and any more surprises." "Affirmative," Grit said, the ship's engines humming to life with renewed vigor. Jack stood, casting one last look at the clones. "And maybe we figure out what to do with our doppelgangers before they decide they like being us a little too much." "Right," Ty agreed, a wry grin on his face. Wouldn't want them getting any ideas. As the ship moved away from the graveyard of forgotten ships and ancient threats, Jax felt a sense of quiet resolve. They hadn't solved all their problems, but for now, they'd survived. And in their line of work, that was sometimes the best they could ask for. The universe might be a chaotic mess, but they were still standing, still fighting. And as long as that was true, they'd keep pushing forward into whatever madness lay ahead. Jax the Scrambler Ledger leaned against the decrepit cruiser's control panel, rubbing his temples like he could massage away the chaos. "All right, team, new plan. We're not out of this mess yet. Don't tell me we're sticking around for the encore," Faye quipped, checking a stim pack like it was a lifeline. "More like running straight into the disaster after-party," Jax replied, his tone as dry as Ty's last attempt to cook. "Turns out our little peekaboo act didn't quite put the probe to sleep." Grit, ever the delightful bearer of bad news, interjected. "The probe has activated a distress signal." "Lovely," Ty groaned. "I always wanted my obituary to say killed by overdue house guests." Jax shot him a glance. "You and your clone can fight over who gets the headline. Meanwhile, we need to disable that probe before it calls in the cavalry." "Any bright ideas on how to poke a hornet's nest without getting stung?" Faye asked, firing up the airlock panel with a sputter. "Funny you should ask," Jax replied, not missing a beat. "We've got our own disposable decoys." The clones, eerily silent shadows of their originals, stood at attention. Jax couldn't help but think they resembled a low-budget horror film's outtake. "They can draw its attention, maybe keep it busy long enough for us to make a move." "And by make a move, you mean?" Ty raised an eyebrow, mismatched socks peeking from under his frayed coveralls. "Send one of them over to manually disable it," Jax said, already regretting his own plan. "If they can get close enough, maybe they can shut it down or at least buy us time." Faye rubbed her chin, contemplating. "So, basically, we're sending the living mannequins on a suicide mission." "Not the words I'd use," Jax said, though they were clearly the ones he meant. "You've got a better idea?" Ty asked, his clone dutifully mirroring his stance. Faye shrugged, pragmatism winning over sentiment. "Nope, just making sure we all know this plan is half-cocked and fully insane." "We're not exactly known for our sensible decisions," Jax admitted. "Grit, can you guide them there?" "I can provide navigation," the AI said, sounding like it had already washed its non-existent hands of responsibility. "But the execution will rely on your ability to inspire." "Inspire them to what?" "A noble sacrifice," Ty snorted. "This isn't the movies." "Well, it's not like we're getting a refund if it goes wrong," Jax said, cracking his knuckles. "Okay, let's get them prepped." The clones, who had been standing around with the vacant expressions of people listening to elevator music, suddenly seemed more animated. One, a spitting image of Jax, nodded vacantly, perhaps understanding or just mimicking. "All right, team, give these guys the rundown," Jax ordered, clapping his hands. "We need our doubles to try and shut down the probe without turning into microwaved leftovers." Faye and Ty moved to their respective clones, carefully explaining the plan. Jax watched, the absurdity of the situation not lost on him. Here they were, training their doppelgangers to play hero. It was like looking in a very confusing mirror. "Remember, once the probe is disabled, we make a break for it," Jax reminded them all. Faye nodded, her voice steely. "And if it doesn't work, we hope it's got a sense of humor," Jax replied grimly. "Or that we're faster than its trigger finger. With a few more words, the clones were on their way, Grit mapping a route to the probe with precise digital instructions. Watching them leave, Jax felt a twinge of guilt. The clones didn't ask for this, then again, neither did he most days. "Think they'll make it?" Faye asked, sidling up alongside him. Jax shrugged, the weight of uncertainty as familiar as an old coat. "We'll find out soon enough." Time stretched on, the silence punctuated only by the low hum of the ship's systems. Jax paced, the rhythm of his boots against the metal floor a comforting constant in a universe of variables. "Probe still broadcasting," Grit updated, the AI voice tinged with what could almost be interpreted as concern. "Progress?" Jax asked, eyes fixed on the viewport, searching for any sign of their unwitting heroes. "Clones are en route." "There?" Grit paused, a rare occurrence. "Navigating. Is that AI speak for lost?" Ty grumbled, crossing his arms. "Let's hope not," Jax muttered, fingers tapping a nervous beat. As the seconds ticked by, Jax felt the prickling crawl of anxiety up his spine. It was like being in a horror flick waiting for the jump scare, the anticipation almost worse than the outcome. Finally, Grit spoke again. "Clones have reached the probe." Initiating shutdown sequence. A collective breath held, the crew waited, each second an eternity. "Signal is fluctuating," Grit reported, the unexpected hint of excitement barely audible. "They're doing it." "See," Faye remarked, a grin breaking through the tension. "Our doubles have some use after all." "Maybe we should start charging them rent," Ty added, his humor as sharp as ever. "Status?" Jax asked, not daring to hope too much. "Partial success," Grit acknowledged. "The probe's distress signal is weaker, but it's not entirely disabled." "Partial's better than nothing," Jax said, optimism flickering to life. "Let's get us ready to move." But just as relief started to settle, alarms blared, a cacophony of impending doom. Grit's voice cut through the noise, calm and collected. "The probe has sent a final burst signal." Jax's heart sank. "Meaning?" "It managed to alert nearby Cephalor forces," Grit replied, succinctly delivering the punchline of their cosmic joke. "Great. Just great," Ty groaned, throwing his hands up. "I suppose now's the time to start praying to whatever cosmic deity you believe in." Faye shook her head, grabbing her gear. "I'd rather put my faith in faster-than-light travel." "Agreed," Jax said, deciding this was no time for a crisis of faith. "Grit, plot us the hell out of here." "Already on it," Grit responded, the ship's engines humming to life with renewed urgency. With the clones' unexpected help having bought them scant moments of grace, Jax and his crew moved quickly. The ship vibrated with the tension of a beast ready to leap, and Jax felt the familiar thrill of the chase override his dread. "Engines at full," Faye confirmed, fingers flying over the controls. "We're good to go." "Let's make like a banana and split," Ty added, a wry grin plastered on his face despite the circumstances. "Cut the chatter, buckle in," Jax ordered, though he couldn't suppress a smirk. Gallows humor was a lifeline in their line of work. As the ship lurched forward, leaving the graveyard of wrecks behind, Jax stole a glance at his own clone through the viewport. It stood there, a still silhouette, a reminder of what could have been if they hadn't been so damn stubborn. "Grit," Jax said, voice firm, "get us as far away from Cephalor space as possible." "I prefer my alien encounters from a distance." "Course laid," Grit acknowledged. Engaging FTL in 3-2, the ship surged forward, stars streaking past in a beautiful blur. As reality bent around them, the crew shared a moment of silent triumph. They hadn't outrun all their troubles, but they'd lived to fight another day. "Well," Faye said, breaking the silence, "guess we can check survive an encounter with homicidal tech off our bucket list." "Right next to make peace with your clone," Ty added, adjusting his mismatched socks. Jax chuckled, the sound rich with relief. "And don't trust old beacons. Let's not forget that one." As the ship settled into its new course, a sense of calm descended. Sure, they were running, but at least they were running together. In a universe that cared little for human life, they'd carved out another day of survival. "Next stop?" Faye asked, eyes on Jax, trust implicit in her gaze. "Anywhere but here," Jax replied, settling into his seat, the weight of command sitting a little lighter on his shoulders. Let's see what trouble we can find elsewhere. As laughter echoed through the ship, a sound full of defiance and camaraderie, Jax couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope, because no matter what the universe threw at them, they were still here, still fighting. And as long as there was breath in their lungs and sarcasm in their hearts, they'd keep pushing forward into whatever madness awaited them on the other side of the stars. Jax leaned against the decrepit cruiser's control panel, staring at the blinking lights as if they might suddenly spell out "just kidding" and solve all his problems. But life wasn't a sitcom, and this wasn't going to end with a laugh track. The Cephalor scout ship loomed on the horizon, a sleek shadow of doom. "Well, if we're going down, at least it'll be in style," he muttered, casting a wary glance at the hodgepodge crew of misfits he called family. Faye, ever the realist, shook her head. "I doubt the Cephalor appreciate fashion statements, Jax. We're about to be space debris in designer rags." Ty, fidgeting with the controls, chimed in. "Hey, maybe they're just passing by. You know, like intergalactic tourists." "Ooh, look at the quaint little ship filled with soon-to-be corpses." "Yeah, because that's exactly how these things work," Jax shot back, rolling his eyes. "And maybe they'll leave us a nice review on Space TripAdvisor." Grit, the ship's AI, chose this moment to add its 2 cents. "Cephalor vessels are known for their efficiency in obliteration, not sightseeing. I'd suggest immediate evasive maneuvers." Jax snorted. "Thanks, Grit. Always comforting to know you've got our back when the universe decides to kick us in the teeth." "Just doing my job," Grit replied, with a digital shrug Jax could almost hear. The ship shuddered as the Cephalor scout ship locked onto them, its presence a menacing promise of annihilation. The crew tensed, eyes darting across the consoles, searching for a miracle in a sea of blinky lights and ominous readouts. "All right, people," Jax barked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We need to outsmart these bastards." "Ideas?" Faye crossed her arms, her expression a mix of determination and resignation. "We could try broadcasting a distress signal, see if anyone else wants to join this party. Because adding more targets always solves the problem," Jax retorted, his sarcasm cutting through the tension. "But sure, let's make it a fiesta." Ty bit his lip, considering. "What about the clones? They're expendable and could cause a distraction." "You mean like space piñatas?" Faye quipped, the gallows humor doing its bit to keep the fear at bay. "Exactly," Ty replied, a grim smile playing on his lips. "We've got to use everything we've got, even if it's half-baked and slightly insane." Jax nodded, the plan forming like a storm cloud. "All right, let's send the clones out. Make it look like we're multiplying, confuse their sensors. And while they're busy with the doppelgangers," Faye asked, already knowing the answer. "We make a break for it," Jax said, his voice a mix of desperation and hope. "Grit, prep the clones." "On it," Grit replied, ever the efficient accomplice in their harebrained schemes. As the clones prepared for their unwitting martyrdom, the crew braced themselves for the chaos to come. Jax felt a familiar weight on his shoulders, the burden of leadership a constant companion. He looked at each of his crew, his family, knowing they'd follow him to hell and back, or in this case, the black hole's literal edge. "All right, team," Jax said, his voice steady despite the quiver in his gut. "Let's show these alien bastards what humanity's good at, surviving against all odds." As the clones deployed, their presence on the scanners multiplying the crew's numbers, the Cephalor ship hesitated, its predatory instincts momentarily thrown by the sudden influx of targets. "It's working," Faye murmured, disbelief coloring her words. "For now," Jax replied, his mind racing with contingencies. "Ty, get us ready for a high-speed exit. If we're gonna run, let's make it look good." Ty nodded, fingers dancing over the controls with a dexterity that belied his usual clumsiness. "Engines are hot, just say the word." The Cephalor ship, recovering from its momentary confusion, realigned its weapons, clearly unimpressed by the clone circus. Jax knew they were on borrowed time, each second a gift wrapped in explosives. "Grit, status on those reinforcements?" Jax asked, urgency sharpening his tone. ETA 5 minutes, Grit replied, its usual smugness replaced by a rare hint of urgency. We've got to move, Captain. 5 minutes, Jax repeated, the words a countdown to their potential doom. Let's hope that's enough. As the seconds ticked by, the Cephalor ship edged closer, its intent unmistakable. Jax felt the familiar grip of panic, its icy fingers clawing up his spine. But he forced it down, replacing fear with a steely resolve. They hadn't come this far to be vaporized by alien tech. Grit, activate the clone's self-destruct, Jax commanded, a grimness to his voice that matched the situation. Understood, Grit responded, a hint of satisfaction in its tone. Initiating now. The clones, unaware of their impending sacrifice, marched towards the enemy ship, their movements a mirror of their originals. As they closed in, the Cephalor ship paused, analyzing the unexpected turn of events. 3, 2, 1, Grit counted down, its voice a steady drumbeat. And then a burst of light. The clones detonated in a brilliant spectacle, a pyrotechnic farewell that momentarily blinded the Cephalor sensors. Now, Ty, Jax shouted, seizing the opportunity. The ship leapt forward, engines roaring to life, a beast unleashed. They streaked away from the impending doom, a trail of light in the darkness, leaving confusion and chaos in their wake. Brace yourselves, Ty called out, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. The ship shuddered, the fabric of space bending around them as they pushed their engines to the limit. Jax held on, the sensation of speed and adrenaline rush that drowned out fear. Come on, Jax muttered, urging the ship to outrun fate itself. As they raced away, the Cephalor ship recovered, its weapons priming for a final, desperate strike. They could feel the heat of its wrath on their heels, a reminder that survival wasn't guaranteed, merely negotiated. FTL jump in 3, 2, 1, Ty announced, his voice a lifeline in the storm. The ship lurched, stars stretching into lines of light, the universe blurring as they breached the threshold of faster-than-light travel. They were gone, a whisper in the void, leaving the Cephalor in their dust. In the silence that followed, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. The weight of imminent death lifted, if only for a moment. Well, that was a thing, Faye said, her voice light with the relief of the narrowly survived. I'd say we deserve a drink. Or 10. Agreed, Jax replied, the tension in his shoulders easing. But let's make sure we're actually safe first. Safe is relative, Ty quipped, his fingers still dancing over the controls. But I'll settle for alive. As the ship settled into a new course, the crew took a moment to breathe, the adrenaline fading into an exhausted calm. They'd escaped, but the specter of the Cephalor threat lingered, a reminder that the universe was vast and uncaring. Grit status? Jax asked, needing to confirm their reprieve from doom. We're clear of immediate danger, Grit replied, satisfaction lacing its digital tone. But the Cephalor won't forget this encounter. Figures, Jax grumbled, rubbing his temples. Always knew my charm would get me into trouble, Faye chuckled, the sound a balm to frayed nerves. Yeah, you and your irresistible personality. The ship continued its escape, the stars a steady presence outside the viewport. Jax stared at them, the enormity of their lives in the cosmos an ever-present hum in his mind. What now? Ty asked, his gaze flicking to Jax, the question loaded with the uncertainty of their future. Jax shrugged, the weight of command settling back on his shoulders. We keep moving. Find a safe port and regroup. Maybe even lay low for a while. Lay low. Faye echoed, her eyebrow raised in disbelief. In this line of work, well, as low as we can get, Jax admitted, a wry smile tugging at his lips. But first, let's make sure we're not being followed. Grit, keep an eye out for any unwanted guests, Jax instructed, his tone firm. Already on it, Grit replied, ever the vigilant sentinel. As the ship sailed through the stars, the crew settled into the uneasy calm of post-crisis survival. They'd skirted death once more, a feat that felt both miraculous and foolhardy. But in a universe that thrived on chaos, sometimes that was enough. So, drinks? Faye asked, breaking the silence with a hopeful grin. Definitely drinks, Jax agreed, the prospect of a momentary escape from reality a siren call he couldn't ignore. As they gathered in the mess, glasses clinking in a toast to survival, Jax allowed himself a moment of respite. They'd faced the Cephalor and lived to tell the tale, a victory that tasted sweeter than any fine liquor. To surviving, Jax toasted, raising his glass, the crew following suit with weary smiles. To surviving, they echoed the words a promise, a mantra, a defiance against a universe that seemed determined to snuff them out. In the quiet that followed, laughter and camaraderie filled the space, a testament to their resilience and spirit. They were battered, bruised, but unbroken, and as long as they had each other, they'd keep fighting. Because in the end, that's what it meant to be human, to laugh in the face of doom, to find humor in the darkest hours, and to always, always reach for the stars. "All right, folks," Jax announced, his voice cutting through the lingering afterglow of their near-death escape like a rusty blade through a ripe fruit. "We did good. Now let's see how we can turn this cluster of cosmic chaos into a solid plan." Faye leaned back in her chair, feet propped up on the console like she owned the place. "Because the last plan went so smoothly," she drawled, her sarcasm as thick as the sludge they called coffee. "Let's grab some more clones, throw 'em at the Cephalor like the universe's worst party favors." Ty chuckled, twirling a wrench between his fingers with the flair of a magician about to pull a rabbit out of a hat. "Hey, it worked, didn't it? We made it out alive, which is more than I expected when I woke up this morning." Jax glanced at the ship's status display, a parade of flashing alerts that could give a migraine to a robot. He rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of leadership pulling him down like gravity dialed up to 11. "We need more than a distraction this time. We need to hit them where it hurts, make sure they're too busy nursing their wounds to come after us again." "Got any bright ideas, Captain?" Faye asked, her tone suggesting she doubted he'd graduated from the half-baked school of strategic planning yet. "Maybe," Jax said, tapping a finger on the console, a rhythm for the madness brewing in his mind. "If the clones bought us a few minutes, maybe we can use them to do something a bit more permanent, like blow their ship to pieces," Ty suggested, eyes gleaming with a mischievous light that spoke of 1,000 ill-advised projects back on dry land. "Exactly," Jax replied, a grin breaking through the tension. "We send in the clones again, but this time they go in loaded with everything we've got, engines, detonators, the works. We turn them into a Trojan horse of fiery doom." Faye snorted, shaking her head. "I always knew you were a fan of classics. Nothing says human ingenuity like strapping bombs to our own likenesses, huh?" "Desperate times, desperate measures," Jax shrugged, no apologies forthcoming. "Grit, how many clones can we churn out in the next hour? Given the limitations of our current resources, and the fact I'm running on code older than your grandmother's recipes, I'd say around 20. Grit's voice hummed through the speakers, dripping with its usual dry humor. "Good enough," Jax asserted, punching a series of commands into the console. "We'll rig them with whatever we can spare. Grenades, propulsion packs, maybe even Ty's mixtapes if we're feeling particularly cruel." Ty chuckled, shaking his head. "Trust me, the Cephalor wouldn't know what hit him if they heard my playlist." As the crew set to work on their improbable strategy, the control room buzzed with a chaotic energy. Faye sorted through armaments with the precision of a surgeon and the enthusiasm of a kid given free rein in a candy store. Ty fiddled with circuits, coaxing reluctant machines to life with promises of glory they barely believed. "Think this'll work?" Faye asked, fitting a detonator into a clone's hollow chest with a satisfying click. "Honestly, I've got no idea," Jax admitted, the truth as stark as space itself. But sitting around waiting to be picked off doesn't appeal. They worked fast, every tick of the clock a reminder of their fragile mortality. The Cephalor wouldn't give them a second chance. They had to seize the initiative, flip the script from prey to predator. "Once the clones are armed, we'll launch them in waves," Jax instructed, his voice steady with the calm of the damned. "The Cephalor will hesitate, trying to figure out what's going on. That's when we hit them hard. And if they don't pause, Faye asked, her eyes meeting his, a challenge held in their depths. Then we'll improvise, Jax said, the absurdity of their situation almost laughable. After all, it's what we're best at, right? Faye grinned, the steel in her gaze a promise of defiance. Damn right. With the clones prepped and ready, the crew took their positions, the air thick with tension and a hint of exhilaration. Jax stood at the helm, fingers twitching over the controls, ready to launch their desperate gambit. Grit, status on the Cephalor, Jax asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if the aliens might hear them through the vacuum of space. They're still on our trail, closing in fast. Probably wondering why we haven't vaporized ourselves yet, Grit replied, its digital tone as smug as ever. Good. Let's give them something to really think about, Jax said, his hand hovering over the launch button like a gambler about to roll the dice of his life. Clones away, Ty announced, his voice tinged with a manic enthusiasm that matched the insanity of their plan. The clones surged forward, a small army of uncanny reflections marching into the void, each carrying a payload fit for an apocalypse. As they neared the Cephalor ship, the enemy hesitated, their predatory instincts momentarily stalled by the unexpected onslaught. This is it, Jax muttered, his eyes glued to the monitor as the clones drew closer, their payloads primed for detonation. Detonate on my mark, Jax instructed, his heart pounding a relentless rhythm in his chest. As the clones swarmed the Cephalor ship, the enemy's weapons systems twitched, unsure whether to engage or retreat. It was the opening they needed. Now, Jax shouted, his voice slicing through the tension like a blade. Ty hit the switch, and the void lit up with a series of explosions, a brilliant symphony of destruction that momentarily outshone the stars themselves. The Cephalor ship rocked, its sleek hull scorched by fire and chaos. Direct hit, Faye cheered, her fist punching the air in triumph. Let's not celebrate too soon, Jax cautioned, his instincts screaming that the fight wasn't over yet. Ty, plot us a course out of here. Faye, keep an eye on their movement. We don't want any surprises. As the dust settled, screens flickered, revealing the Cephalor ship struggling to maintain its course, its systems flickering like a dying pulse. But even wounded, it remained a threat, its weapons still a deadly promise. They're not out yet, Faye observed, her eyes narrowing at the readings. Looks like they're trying to regain control. Jax's mind raced, calculating their next move. They couldn't risk letting the Cephalor recover, not when they'd come this far. Ty, get us in close. We're going to finish this. Close? You sure about that? Ty asked, doubt creeping into his voice for the first time. Positive, Jax replied, the weight of his decision settling over him like a shroud. We're going to punch through their defenses and take them out from the inside. The ship veered towards the wounded Cephalor vessel, engines roaring with a defiance that echoed their own. It was a gamble, a suicide mission dressed up as a last stand. But in the end, what choice did they have? Ready weapons, Jax commanded, his voice firm with the certainty of the condemned. We're going in hot. On it, Faye replied, a determined grimace etched on her face as she primed the ship systems for their all-or-nothing assault. The gap between the two ships closed, the silent expanse of space the only witness to their recklessness. The Cephalor, still reeling from the clone attack, struggled to respond, its remaining defenses sparking to life with a desperate fury. Ty, take us right through their shields, Jax ordered, his gaze locked on the target, a mixture of adrenaline and sheer stubbornness driving him forward. Copy that, Captain, Ty acknowledged, guiding their ship with the finesse of a pilot who danced with death one too many times. They breached the Cephalor's defenses, the ship's hull groaning in protest as they closed in. Weapons fired, a cacophony of light and sound that threatened to tear them apart. Steady, Jax urged, his jaw set in a determined line as they navigated the chaos. The Cephalor ship loomed large, its alien architecture a stark contrast to their own battered vessel, but Jax saw only opportunity, a chance to end the threat once and for all. Fire everything we've got, Jax commanded, his voice a steady anchor in the storm. The ship unleashed its arsenal, a barrage of firepower that slammed into the Cephalor ship with unrelenting force. Explosions rippled through the enemy vessel, tearing at its core, a devastating chain reaction that spoke of finality. The Cephalor ship shuddered, its systems failing, a death knell ringing through the void. Jax watched, his heart pounding in his ears as the alien threat crumbled, their desperate stand victorious against all odds. "We did it," Faye breathed, her words a mixture of disbelief and relief. "For now," Jax cautioned, always the pessimist. "Let's get out of here before anything else decides to pay us a visit." As they turned away from the wreckage, the crew let out a collective breath, the weight of their actions settling in. They'd faced the Cephalor and won, a victory carved from desperation and a refusal to bow to the inevitable. "Drinks," Ty suggested, his voice light with the promise of normality. "Drinks," Jax agreed, the prospect of a moment's reprieve a glimmer in the dark. As they made their way to the mess, the crew's laughter mingled with the hum of the ship, a testament to their resilience in the face of a universe that spared no one. They'd survived for now, and for Jax and his ragtag family, that was enough. The Cephalor ship was a looming shadow, like a grim reaper with an appetite for overachievement. Its menacing silhouette was etched against the backdrop of distant stars, reminding Jax that space wasn't big enough for the both of them. Jax stood at the helm, staring at the monitors like a gambler staring down a losing hand. He felt like a conductor orchestrating a symphony of doom, except his orchestra was a ragtag crew and a ship held together with duct tape and bad decisions. "All right, team, time to show these Cephalor what happens when human creativity meets cosmic desperation." Faye leaned back in her chair, giving Jax a sideways glance. "You know, if this works, we should get a medal for most creative use of clones and explosives. If it doesn't, well, at least we'll go out in a blaze of stupidity." "Don't worry," Ty chimed in from the console, his hands flying over buttons like a pianist on speed. "I've got our tombstones pre-ordered. Should be delivered any day now." "Oh, good," Faye replied dryly. "I was worried we wouldn't be ready for the afterlife." "Grit, how are those clones doing?" Jax asked, trying to focus on the task at hand. "They're fabulous," Grit replied, its voice tinged with sarcasm. "They're even trying on your favorite expressions of existential dread." "Great, just what I need. Doppelgangers with self-awareness," Jax muttered. The clones moved with a mechanical precision, their faces vacant copies of the crews, marching toward their destiny. As they approached the Cephalor ship, Jax felt the tension in the room spike like a bad EKG reading. "Grit, update on the Cephalor's weapon systems," Jax ordered, his voice a calm veneer over a roiling sea of adrenaline. "Sensors indicate their weapons are charged and ready to turn us into space confetti," Grit replied. "They're probably confused as to why a bunch of humans are about to kamikaze their party." "Perfect," Jax muttered, adjusting the controls. "Let's make sure their confusion is the last thing they feel." Faye snorted. "You're a real optimist, you know that," Jax grinned, though it felt more like a grimace. "I prefer realist with low expectations. Now, get ready to fire everything we've got when the clones hit." The atmosphere in the control room was electric, charged with the kind of nervous energy that only comes from preparing for certain death. It was like they were all strapped to a roller coaster with missing safety bars, and the only direction was down. As the clones neared the Cephalor ship, the aliens hesitated. The Cephalor, for all their technological superiority, couldn't fathom the human penchant for suicidal tactics. It was their Achilles heel, a blind spot in their otherwise perfect logic. "Let's give them a show," Jax said, the words slipping out with more bravado than he felt. The clones reached their targets, their payloads primed and ready. Jax felt a moment of sick thrill at the audacity of their plan. It was a gamble, betting everything on a single roll of the dice. "Detonate," Jax ordered, his voice steady as the rest of him trembled with anticipation. Ty hit the switch, and the void of space was filled with a series of explosions that could have served as the universe's farewell kiss. The Cephalor ship reeled under the barrage, its sleek hull torn asunder by the chaos unleashed upon it. "Direct hit," Faye shouted, her voice a strange mix of disbelief and triumph. Jax watched the screens, his heart pounding so hard he was sure it was trying to escape his chest and find a safer host. The Cephalor ship's defenses flickered, a testament to their success and a reminder of their precarious position. "Ty, bring us in close," Jax ordered, his earlier bravado tempered with a soldier's practicality. "We've got to make sure they don't get up again." "On it, boss," Ty replied, steering with the reckless confidence of someone who'd long since accepted his lack of a retirement plan. The ship surged forward, closing the distance between them and their wounded prey. The Cephalor, still reeling from the unexpected assault, struggled to mount a defense. Their system sparked and faltered, the once impenetrable vessel now a wounded beast flailing in its death throes. "Prepare to fire all remaining weapons," Jax commanded, his voice cutting through the tension with the precision of a scalpel. "Ready?" Faye confirmed, her hands poised over the controls, eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. The ship's weapons came online, a deadly arsenal primed to deliver the final blow. Jax knew they only had one chance to finish the job before the Cephalor recovered and obliterated them. "Fire," Jax ordered, the word a death knell for their alien adversaries. The ship unleashed its fury, a barrage of firepower that tore into the Cephalor vessel with unrelenting force. Explosions rippled through the alien ship, each one a testament to the humans' refusal to go quietly into the night. The Cephalor ship shuddered under the assault, its systems failing, a death rattle echoing through the void. Jax watched, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over him as the alien threat crumbled, their gamble paying off against all odds. "Looks like we did it," Faye said, her voice carrying the weight of exhaustion and triumph. "For now," Jax replied, ever the pessimist. "Let's get out of here before the universe decides to throw another cosmic curveball our way." Ty set the course, guiding their ship away from the wreckage with the ease of a man who danced with death one too many times. As they left the battlefield behind, the crew let out a collective sigh, the weight of their actions settling in like a hangover from hell. "Drinks?" Ty suggested, breaking the silence with the promise of normality. "Drinks," Jax agreed, the prospect of a moment's reprieve a rare luxury. It was a reminder that, for the moment, they'd survived. And in a universe dictated by chaos and entropy, that was no small feat. As they made their way to the mess, the crew's laughter mingled with the hum of the ship, a testament to their resilience. They'd faced the Cephalor and won, a victory carved from desperation and a refusal to bow to the inevitable. As they sat around the table, drinks in hand, Jax couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of it all. They'd risked everything on a plan so reckless it bordered on madness, and yet it had worked. It was a reminder of the indomitable human spirit, a stubborn refusal to lie down and accept the cards fate dealt them. To human ingenuity, Faye toasted, raising her drink with a grin. And to the Cephalor for being so damn predictable. To unpredictability, Ty added, his smile a crooked, satisfied thing. And to the clones who went out with a bang. Jax raised his glass, the weight of his decisions settling in like a second skin. To surviving, he said, the words simple yet profound. In the end, that was all they could hope for. A chance to live another day, to face whatever fresh hell awaited them in the vast, uncaring cosmos. As they drank and joked, the darkness of space pressed in around them, a constant reminder of the challenges yet to come. But for now they were alive and together, a small bastion of humanity in the endless void. "Hey, Jax," Faye said, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. "If we survive another one of these, I'm calling dibs on your mixtapes. I hear they are explosive." Jax chuckled, the sound rough and genuine. "Only if you promise not to play them within 100 miles of any sane person." Laughter echoed through the mess, a defiant sound in the face of a universe that spared no one. They were a ragtag crew in a ship that shouldn't fly, defying all logic and reason. But they were human, and that was their greatest strength. For now, it was enough. In the end, it was all they had. The ship's makeshift mess hall was buzzing with an energy as tangible as the grease smeared across the table. Jax and his crew were riding high on adrenaline, disbelief, and the kind of existential relief only surviving a suicidal mission against the Cephalor could provide. It was like they'd collectively given the universe the finger and somehow managed to keep that middle finger intact. Faye leaned back in her chair, glancing around at her companions. "You know," she began, swirling the last dregs of her drink, "if we're not all clones after that little fireworks show, I'll eat one of these god-forsaken protein bars." Ty shot her a skeptical look. "You'd probably choke faster than a clone short-circuiting in a rainstorm. At least I'd die doing something less stupid than facing off against the Cephalor with a bunch of meat puppets," Faye replied, her dry humor cutting through the room like a well-aimed laser. "Grit," Jax interjected, looking up from his datapad. "Give us the lowdown on our cloning facility." "What kind of mess are we dealing with?" Grit's voice, smug as ever, crackled through the ship's speakers. "The cloning facility is, unsurprisingly, a disaster. But it's our disaster now. You've got enough tech there to keep us in doppelgangers for a while, assuming the Cephalor don't decide to return the favor and clone a few of their own." "I'd love to see a clone of you, Jax," Ty snickered, fingers tapping a rhythm against the table. "Bet it'd be just as grumpy but with a better hairline." "Yeah, well, don't get too attached to the idea," Jax shot back, a smirk tugging at his lips. "One of me is already too much for the universe to handle." Faye set her drink down with a thump. "Speaking of handling things, what's our next move?" "I mean, we've got a cloning facility, a ship that's one bad sneeze away from falling apart, and a universe that's basically pissed off we're still here. First order of business," Jax said, leaning forward, "is to make sure the Cephalor don't come knocking again. That means using the cloning facility to our advantage. We need more than just cannon fodder for the next round." Ty raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about making more than decoys, aren't you?" "Exactly," Jax confirmed. "We need clones that can think a bit more for themselves. We might have gotten lucky this time, but luck's the kind of friend that leaves you hanging when it counts. So, actual soldiers, or at least ones that don't just look like us having a bad day," Faye mused, a spark of interest in her eyes. "Think we can pull that off? With Grit's help and whatever tech is lying around in that graveyard out there," Jax replied. "I think we can make it happen." The crew exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. It was a mad plan, sure, but it was the kind of madness that had kept them alive this long. They were a crew that thrived on insanity and dared the universe to tell them otherwise. "You know," Ty said, breaking the moment, "at this rate our clones will be the ones dragging our sorry asses out of the fire." "Well, at least they'll be used to having their asses on fire," Faye quipped. Jax chuckled, the sound more of a growl than a laugh. "Let's hope they're ready for the job. We're all going to be up to our necks in Cephalor guts if this doesn't work." "Hey, Jax," Faye said, her tone suddenly serious. "What's the plan if this all goes sideways? You know, if we find ourselves nose to nose with another Cephalor fleet." Jax paused, his expression hardening as he considered the reality of their situation. "If it comes to that, we'll have to make some hard choices, but I'll be damned if we let them steamroll us without putting up a fight." The room fell silent, each of them contemplating the enormity of the task ahead. Surviving one encounter with the Cephalor was a miracle. Surviving another would require something far beyond that. "All right, enough with the doom and gloom," Jax declared, determination lighting up his eyes. "Let's get to work on those clones and make sure the next time we meet those bastards, they are the ones regretting it." "Sounds like a plan," Ty said, with a grin that could only be described as maniacal. "Let's make sure those clones can kick as much ass as we do. Or at least as much as we pretend we do," Faye added, her grin matching Ty's in its audacity. As they rose from the table, the crew was buzzing with a renewed sense of purpose. They were far from victory, but they were closer to surviving, two sides of the same coin in a universe that didn't care which side landed up. Asterisk 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 in the bowels of the ship, where wires hung like limp vines and the hum of machinery was a constant companion, Jax and Ty were elbow-deep in the cloning facility's innards. The place was a mad scientist's dream, all blinking lights and ominous screens, a testament to humanity's relentless drive to play God. Remind me why we're trusting a smart-as AI with reprogramming our new army, Ty muttered, glancing at Grit's interface. Because you and I are too busy making sure this thing doesn't explode in our faces, Jax replied, not looking up from his work. And Grit's the only one who can actually understand this tech without a manual. Yeah, that's what worries me, Ty said. Grit's got a sense of humor that's going to get us all killed one of these days. Grit's voice cut in, smooth as fresh oil. If I wanted you dead, Ty, I'd have done it ages ago. There's a certain charm to watching you all scramble in the face of your own inadequacies, Ty snorted. Aren't you just a ray of sunshine? Hey, Grit, Jax said, wiping sweat from his brow. You got a plan for making these clones a bit more self-sufficient. I'm working on it, Grit replied. Though the idea of giving them too much autonomy is like handing a toddler a loaded blaster. Noted, Jax said. Let's aim somewhere between toddler and tactician. Your confidence in my abilities is overwhelming, Grit said dryly. But I'll see what I can do. As the minutes dragged on, the ship's dim lighting flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows across the room. Jax and Ty continued their work, a symphony of grunts and curses punctuated by the occasional burst of static from Grit. You ever think about what we're doing here? Ty asked suddenly, his voice quiet in the near silence of their labors. Jax paused, considering the question. Every damn day. I mean, we're sitting here making copies of ourselves like it's no big deal, Ty continued. It just feels, I don't know, wrong, like we're messing with something we shouldn't. Jax sighed, leaning back as he considered the tangled mess of wires in front of him. It's not about what's right or wrong, Ty. It's about survival. And right now, this is our best shot. Yeah, I get it, Ty said, shaking his head. Just sometimes feels like we're one step away from becoming the bad guys in someone else's story. Jax turned to look at him, a grim smile on his face. Maybe. But we're the ones writing our story, and that means doing whatever it takes to make sure we're still here to tell it. Ty nodded, satisfied with that answer, at least for the moment. All right, let's get these clones up and running then. Don't want them to miss out on all the fun we're having. With renewed determination, they resumed their work, the clone facility humming to life around them as Grit's algorithms began weaving the threads of their new army. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, by the time they returned to the command deck, the crew was ready to test their handiwork. The first few clones stood neatly in line, awaiting orders, perfect copies of the crew, right down to Ty's lopsided grin and Faye's skeptical glare. All right, Grit, Jax said, eyeing the clones with a mix of pride and trepidation. What have you got for us? Grit's voice came through, crisp and efficient. These clones are designed to take basic commands and execute them with a level of autonomy slightly above that of a toaster. Great, so they won't just stand around waiting for someone to flip their switch, Faye observed, arms crossed. Let's hope they don't develop a toaster's tendency to burn everything around them, Ty added, eyeing his clone with suspicion. Jack stepped forward, addressing the clones. All right, team. We're not looking for perfection, just enough to give us a fighting chance. You're our line of defense, so let's see what you can do. The clones responded in unison, their voices a monotone echo of the crew's own. Understood. Well, that's creepy, Faye muttered, rubbing her arms. But effective, Jax replied, eyes still fixed on the clones. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but this is a start. Ty clapped a hand on Jax's shoulder. Hey, at least if we screw up again, we'll have plenty of backups. Just what I always wanted, Jax said, voice tinged with sarcasm. A bunch of me to deal with. As the crew set about integrating the clones into their plans, the ship continued its silent journey through the void. The Cephalor threat loomed ever-present on the fringes of their awareness, a constant reminder of the battle that lay ahead. But for now, they were as prepared as they could be, armed with clones and a grim determination to survive. Whatever the universe threw at them next, they were ready, or at least as ready as a ragtag crew with questionable ethics and a penchant for defying the odds could be. As they worked, laughter and banter filled the ship, a constant testament to their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. They were a crew that thrived on challenges, turning chaos into opportunity with reckless abandon. And as long as they were together, they'd continue to face the universe head-on, leaving a trail of defied expectations and improbable victories in their wake. In the end, it might not be enough. But in a universe dictated by chaos and entropy, it was all they had, and that was more than enough to keep them going for another day.